Welcome back to Milan Recording Studios. My name is James Pavel Shakras, and in today's video, as you can definitely see, I'm going to be doing an in-depth review of the Nord Stage 3. It's probably one of the most obviously iconic instruments of today's period. You look at it and you know exactly what it is because of this wonderful bright red color. I think there are some people out there who don't like the bright red, but I really love it. It makes it stand out from everything else, and it just really, you immediately know what it is without even having to think about it. The bright red is Nord. So today I'm going to be doing an in-depth review. I'm going to be walking you through some of the many sounds on this keyboard and talking about some of the good things about it, some of the bad things about it, and just overall giving you guys a review. If you guys like keyboards, you might want to go check out my channel. I'm going to be having lots of cool keyboard videos coming out in the future and some that have already been posted. Many of the top brands of keyboard manufacturers in the world today are going to be featured on my channel in this video where I compare many of the top brands of keyboards. So if you want to go check that out, you can. If you want to think about subscribing, thank you very much. Make sure to hit the notification bell to be informed of all of my future uploads. I'm going to be doing all kinds of cool comparisons between these modern keyboards, as well as comparing them to some of the vintage equipment they try to replicate. So if any of that sounds cool to you, you might want to think about subscribing. If you do, thank you very much. Make sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and let's get on with the review. So the Nord Stage 3, as I've said, is a very iconic instrument. We all know what they look like. Even if we've never seen one in person, we've probably all seen them before in videos of people performing on them live, and we all probably know that that bright red color is Nord. They've been very famous for having a very unique user interface and having very high quality sounds. So today I will dive into that and talk about that. But before I do that, I want to talk about some of the overall overview things of the keyboard, such as the build quality. The build quality on this instrument is actually kind of interesting because nowhere on the instrument, as far as the frame of it is concerned, there is no visible plastic. The top of it is all metal. The front here, as well as the entire underside, is metal, and the sides of it are wood. Now, there might be internal plastic braces, but from what I can see, there's no actual plastic on the outside of the frame, which is kind of cool. But yet, even though it's metal and wood, which are two pretty heavy materials, Nord has managed to keep this instrument very light. I believe it's between 41 and 43 pounds. I think that's where it lies. Other manufacturers that have used similar materials, metal and wood, some of those keyboards can be in the range of 70 pounds or so. So this is a very light keyboard. It's also very thin, as you can see. It's very compact and very slim, and also therefore very attractive. But one interesting thing to note about that is that that means that the keys are actually a little bit lower than on some of the other models. That particular keyboard I mentioned that weighs 73 pounds, the keys, the distance from the bottom of the keyboard to the tops of the keys is around 4 to 5 inches. On this keyboard, that's only 3. And I mention that because if you don't have an adjustable stand and you're a bit taller, this might be a little bit lower than you're used to, and that might be something you'd have to get used to with this keyboard. Speaking of the keys, on this keyboard, for this price point, you'd really expect it to have wooden keys, but unfortunately, the one area that this keyboard does have a lot of visible plastic besides the buttons would be the keys. The keys are all plastic. Both the white keys and the black keys do have plastic on them, and unfortunately, that is a bit of a drawback. That's probably the main thing really holding this back from becoming the new practice piano here at Milan Recording Studios, is that the action is plastic. It's called a Hammer Action 88, and on Nord website and in the owner manual, they call it a fully weighted, and I'll get into that a little bit, but it's very light compared to a real fully weighted action or even some of the other keyboards on the market. Some people do like a light action, but if you're looking for a real piano experience, this is not going to be providing that for you. However, having said that, it does have many organ sounds and many synth sounds, so as a result, people who are into synths and are into organs and used to playing those probably wouldn't like the heavier piano action, so I'm willing to bet that that is why Nord went for that. There's actually 3 different iterations of the Nord Stage 3. There is the 88 key version, which I have here. There is a 76 key version, which has a slightly different, lighter action, and then the 73 key has an even lighter action yet, and it also has waterfall keys because Nord figures that the people who are going to be buying the more compact versions aren't going to be pianists and instead are going to be more synth-based and more organ-based, which is why the 73 key version has waterfall keys like on a Hammond organ. As I said, the build quality on this instrument is quite high. I really enjoyed the feel of these buttons. They are plastic, but they do have a really nice clicky feel, and they are awesome. And the 2 other parts of the instrument that are surprisingly high quality would be the pitch bend and the mod wheel. The pitch bend is wood, and the mod wheel is actually metal, which is kind of interesting. Now, one thing on the instrument that is a bit low quality in my opinion would be the pedal unit. It's not the worst pedal unit I've ever seen, but it isn't the best pedal unit either. Many of the other keyboards that I've reviewed so far have a better stock pedal unit. Now, there is a triple pedal unit that you can purchase separately for the Nord Stage 3. It's very similar to the one that Kawai used to use on the old MP11. In fact, I believe it's the same thing, just with a slightly different connector design, and it's branded Nord rather than Kawai. But this one here might be manufactured by the same company, and the feel of the pedal is alright, but the feel of the actual build quality isn't great. It has this kind of cheap feeling rubber plastic, and the underside of it isn't all that great, and it does kind of like to wander around a bit on the floor, and I've got a pretty grippy rubbery floor, so if you're using this on wood or a slippery stage, it's probably going to wander away on you, and you're probably going to want to do something about that. It's also got a Nord brand here. So as I said, the triple pedal unit would be a bit of an upgrade, but one odd little quirk is that only the triple pedal unit actually creates damper noise in the instrument. The single pedal unit doesn't. So if you want that damper noise, you're going to want to have the triple pedal unit, but if you don't want that, the single unit is fine for you. You can also toggle that in the keyboard. Another thing this instrument doesn't come with is a music desk, but there are two little ports for it right here where you can install an aftermarket music desk that you have to buy separately. So onwards with the review. Let me change the camera angle and let me play a couple of pieces on the default grand piano sound, the Royal Grand 3D. I hope you guys enjoy hearing a bit of music on that. It's really lovely sounding. So let's take a look here at the piano section of the Nord Stage 3. I'm going to briefly walk you through some of the things that you can do in this section, as well as look through some of the sounds. Now, there's a few ways of changing the sounds on the Nord Stage 3, and all of them are a little bit quirky. You have a list knob here that you can use, but what this does is it doesn't only change the sounds in one category, it changes them through all of them. For example, Royal Gan 3D is a piano. Hybrid Super MW is like it's like a Yamaha DX7 sound, and B3 Jazzy Joey is, of course, a Hammond B3. So if you only want to have the piano sounds, the best way to do it is to use this knob here, and you can just turn it like this, and as you can see, the name underneath will change. If you hold Shift and turn that knob, you will see it in a list view, which I personally prefer, and that's how I'm going to be using the menus as much as possible in this video, because lists are nice. So basically, you have a Royal Grand 3D, which you've already heard. I'm just going to give you a little bit of another demo of it, a bit of the ending of Debussy's Clair de Lune. That's the Royal Grand 3D, and as you can see, there's an XL on the right. That basically refers to the file size of that sound. It's a very large file size. Here's the Grand Imperial. It's a bit of a brighter sound, but it has a bit of a more larger sounding bass than on the Royal Grand. Here is the Grand Lady D, which I have to imagine would be trying to sound somewhat like a Steinway. I say that because the name Lady D must be in reference to Steinway D. Italian Grand, which I suppose could be imitating a Fazioli. It's a bit brighter than a modern Fazioli. Here we have Velvet Grand. Silver Grand. Studio Grand 2. We're almost done with the piano sounds. Bit of a muffled tone on that one. Here's Bright Grand. And here's the final one, which I don't know why it's in the grand category, but it's an Electric Grand. After that, we go on to the upright piano category. Now, before I leave the grand category, I just wanted to talk about a few buttons over here. This here is a timbre button. Basically, this changes between the default, which is no lights, a soft timbre, which is this, mid, and bright, and then default. So on every single piano, you can apply that to it if you want a bit of a softer sound. You can have it be a bit of a softer sound. And I do like that because what I'm finding in many of these pianos is that the range right about down here, it's a bit off camera, but this range right here, it's why I like to play the Debussy piece because it demonstrates that. This range here, right about from the second octave in through the fourth octave, the beginning of it, is very mellow. Below that is a little bit brighter, and above it, right in this range here, which you probably can't see, but it's around the fourth to fifth octaves, suddenly gets a bit bright, and that's why I was playing that Debussy there, because it shows that off. See, it's mellow here, and then bright. So if you turn on the soft, it takes that away and makes it a little bit more mellow in this region, but also makes it a bit more mellow in the bass as well. Keyboard touch basically just makes it easier to play loud. And then you have layer detune. Now layer detune, basically what that does is you can actually layer sounds with the panel A and B. So in panel A, you can have a certain sound setup. In panel B, you can have a completely different sound setup. At the moment, they're exactly the same. And then by pressing both at the same time, you can have both of them going. And the blinking one shows you which one you're looking at. So I have both of them set to the same thing, but what I'm going to do is go into layer B and make that be the Grand Imperial, just for the sake of discussion. So layer A A is Royal Grand, layer B is Grand Imperial. I can layer them like that, and we're looking at layer B, now we're looking at layer A, and then you can come over here to the layer D tune. So right now they're both going. Here's layer D tune 1, number 2, and number 3. So that is what that sounds like, and when you do that, it sounds a bit fitting for this type of music. So that would be why you would want the layer D tune if you wanted to get that kind of a sound, because to be completely honest, they do have a honky-tonk piano sound in here, but it is a bit weird sounding. They do have a few upright pianos as well, Bambino upright, Black upright, Grand upright, which actually sounds pretty decent for an upright piano. And then we have the honky-tonk, which, as I mentioned, is really cheesy sounding. It's really ridiculous sounding. And then one of my favorite upright pianos, there's also a saloon upright too here. Not great sounding either. But there was one in here that I really liked. Which one was it? Mellow upright. This one's really nice. Has a very dark, transparent tone, and it's a lot of fun to play. Then we move on. After the upright category, we have electric pianos. So these would be things like Rhodes. The first ones here are imitating Rhodes. The next one is a different variation of the Rhodes. We've got shallow, close. It does sound kind of shallow. Then we have Mark V 80s, bright tines, sparkle top, and a number of various others. There's also Wurlitzer sounds, so this would be kind of like a Wurlitzer 200 or a 200A, although I do think that their version is pretty far off from that, to be honest with you, especially the Wurlitzer 1. Here's Wurlitzer 2. Also, we have clavinet sounds, and all of these clavinet sounds, each one is supposed to sound like a clavinet being set to a different pickup. Then after that, there is Italian harpsichord. Which is actually a pretty decent sounding harpsichord. Here we have one that's supposed to sound like the lute stop on a harpsichord. Then there's also a French harpsichord as well. We have some DX7 sounds, at least one of them. Digigrand, ballad pianos, which would be more like DX kind of sounds. Silver EP and hybrid EP. So those are the piano categories, and I like to go through them in the list section because it puts them all in the right order, and it's very easy to see which one you have selected and what the name is. There's also a few other things to discuss here. Over here we have octave shift, so of course that will octave shift it up and down. I'm playing the same note here. If I move my hand here, you should be able to see it. You can only go one octave down, unfortunately, but you can go up quite a few. Actually, no, you can only go up one octave, actually, which is kind of weird. Because I know some other keyboards you can go like up 2 or 3 octaves, but you can only go up and down 1 octave, at least in this menu here. The P stick here, if you hold the, that sounded weird, if you hold the exit button, or the shift button down, and then you press the octave down, basically it activates the pitch stick, which then means we can now have pitch bending on the piano. but it's off by default. The sustain pedal is on by default. If you hold shift and push the octave up button, it turns on and off the ability to use a sustain pedal, as you can see, on and off. So if I hold the sustain pedal when it's off, it does nothing. Then we have a keyboard zone, so you can have it being in all of them or some of them, and at the moment it only wants to be on all of them or none of them. This is a level knob, and this here is a very important button. Basically, this here activates the string resonance, which is one of the things that makes the piano sound very realistic. If I have it on and I play some notes in the treble, hopefully you can hear that. If I turn that off by pushing it a couple times, you can hear the treble sounds much more dead and very less alive. Once more with it on. It's really gorgeous, and it actually sounds a lot like a real piano in that high treble range. Soft release basically makes the staccato notes a little bit less crisp. If I turn that off, a little more crisp. If I turn it back on, it makes the release a little bit softer, as if the damper wasn't seating on the string quite hard enough. And you can have both of them on or both of them off. Pedal noise, as I mentioned earlier, is only available on the triple pedal unit, but by holding shift, you can toggle that on and off. And I think that that's just about everything in the piano section. You can access menus here with these buttons by holding shift and entering the menus. You can scroll through and do things like changing the fine tune of the instrument and go all the way up to 452.9 hertz or down 427. And let's put it right back in the middle at 440. But as you can see, you can go up or down, which sounds kind of cool. There we go, back in the middle. And you can access sound, which there aren't too many sound options for the piano, but there are a number of them for the organ. There's 2 for the piano, 2 for the synth, and then the rest of them are for the organ. So that's kind of interesting. Then there's MIDI controls, external stuff, and utility menus as well. So that, I think, is just about everything for the piano menu. So let's move on to the organ section. So now let's take a look at the organ sounds. Now, many of the organ categories are right over here. These are all of the things exclusive to the organ, just like this section here is exclusive to the piano, and this is kind of like your main control area. Now, getting to the organ sounds, I've found is a bit weird. Remember how we had this nice list over here that we could hold shift and get to the piano list, and we can scroll through, and everything in here is either an acoustic piano or an electric piano or some variant of that? Well, there isn't a list button or a dial, a knob, for the organ sounds. So the only ways to see the organ sounds is to scroll through here and jump through everything. This one here is an organ sound. That's an organ sound. That is one. That's an organ sound. Actually, I think only part of it's an organ sound. There's a synth lead in there too. And that's an organ sound. So that's one way you can find the organ sounds, but the other way you can do it is to hold shift and then use this wheel. And then basically what that will do, hang on, I did something wrong. You use shift, you hold this wheel down. Then in here, in this menu, you can see that it says numbers, ABC, and catalog, and that will filter. So if you hit this button, it filters it by the number. If you hit this button, it filters it alphabetically. And if you hit this button, it filters it by catalog. But you have to hold it down. Then with this knob, you scroll and select the category you want. So I want organ, and then I let go of this button, and it gives me all of the organ sounds. Now, I would have really preferred an organ list. There's a nice big empty area over here. They could have easily fit this button, or I guess it's a dial. This knob easily could have fit right over here, but for some strange reason there isn't an organ select. So either I'm doing that wrong, or that's the only way to do that. But in here we have a large number of sounds. We have a few Vox sounds. This one here is labeled 96 Tears. I don't actually know the song 96 Tears, but that was a song from, I believe, the 50s or 60s that used a Vox, and it was called 96 Tears. That's what that one sounds like. And then we also have a lot of Hammond organ sounds. There are a large number of presets. They're all labeled B3 at the beginning, and there are a large number of them. Now, what's really nice is, as you can see, we have a lot of drawbars over here, and basically on the full-size Nord Stage 3, as well as the 76 key Nord Stage 3, we have these buttons. And so basically you push this button to make the drawbar go in, you push this drawbar to make it go out, and if you listen to it, I forget, I don't know where the Jazzy Joey one went, because I liked that preset, but oh well, I'll just use this one here. No, not that one, I'll use this one. So basically, you can actually just individually control all of the drawbars here. Just like you can on a real Hammond B3, and they put a lot of attention to detail into this. First of all, I love the way that these work, even though they're buttons. Like, I would technically prefer manual drawbars, but I really don't mind using these. They've designed them in a way so that if you tap them once, it goes down one click, and if you hold them, it immediately starts increasing and decreasing the drawbar, and I really like that. That's probably the best way to do it, and also, if I haven't mentioned already, all of these buttons have a really awesome feel. They feel fantastic. And also, the keyboards on many of the B3 sounds are actually split. As you can see here, this little green light means that on this half of the keyboard is one sound, and on this half of the keyboard is the other sound. And I believe that oftentimes the B side is the right hand, and A is the left hand. So in the left hand, all we've got is these two drawbars going on. But as I'm on the A side, now I can edit, and then the B side is the right hand, which I've completely messed up from the preset, but that is how that works. Just like on a real B3, you have these drawbars, and they also have a little gritty clicking sound as you pull them in and out, kind of like a Hammond organ would. Hear that? That would brrr. It's supposed to sound like static, I guess. The B3 sounds on here are probably one of the best that you will find on a stage piano like this one. The Leslie simulator, for having, you know, no actual moving parts, actually sounds a bit like a recorded Leslie, to be honest with you. I mean... And they really nailed the speed and the transition sound, the transition time of that, and it actually sounds pretty good to me anyway. And I like how the Leslie speed button is over here on the left of the instrument, very much like it would be on a Hammond organ. On a Hammond organ, there was a speed switch over here on this section of the keyboard, which might actually be off screen, but it was to the left of the player on the edge of the keyboard, but on here it's on the left of the instrument. Now I believe that I can assign that to this wheel here. Yeah, here we go. From stop to fast. So basically I can assign that knob, this setting, to this wheel here as well. Although what I didn't actually know is that also changes the speed at which it transfers up from fast to slow. So if you simply throw that wheel up, it immediately gets slow and fast. So I think using this button actually is the best way to do that with, because it gets the actual sound of the Leslie speed switch in there. So basically, then over here we have a stop mode as well, which basically makes the Leslie stop moving, as you can hear. So that would be if you don't want it to actually sound like a Leslie. For some reason, you can make it do that as well. This button here will actually make it so that you can run a electric piano or some kind of a synth through the rotary speaker, which is cool. And this knob here is a drive. So it makes it sound really gritty if you want it to be. I like to have it on the off setting because it sounds a lot like a stock Hammond B3. Up here we have octave shift buttons just like before, which actually, yeah, here we go. Wait, they're not actually doing anything. What am I doing wrong here? I don't know why the octave shift buttons aren't doing anything. I'm on the B side, but for some reason those aren't doing anything. But we do, if you hold shift and you push the sustain pedal button, it does what it's supposed to do. And makes it so that you can have the Hammond B3 sounds going without holding the keys, which is very handy when using the speed switch button. For some reason, it doesn't default to having that on, probably because a real B3 didn't have a sustain pedal. And then over here, we also have a pitch stick button like before, which should work. So if you want to do some manual vibrato or do weird note slides with the pitch stick, you can do that. Then this is kind of like before. We have the zone select, which we can toggle on and off, a level for the organ specifically, which is handy if you want to layer it. And then up here we have Vox and other organ models. So you can actually have it sound like a Vox or a Farfisa or pipe organs, apparently. Then over here we have vibrato and chorus, which are very important. They're a thing very important to the Hammond B3 before the Leslie speed switch was, well, basically what happened with the Hammond B3 was they invented it, and then many people, because it was supposed to be a replacement for a pipe organ, many people said it didn't sound like a pipe organ because the sound was too static. So basically what Hammonds did was they added in the chorus and the vibrato effect to make it sound like the sound was moving around a bit. And if I toggle that on and off, you can hear that. That's the vibrato setting. This is the C3, the one that everyone loves to use on the original Hammonds, which has a very nice sound. There's also, you can toggle between them like you could on a Hammond, and get a number of other sounds as well. Percussion is an interesting feature that the Hammond organ had. It was only available on the B preset on the upper manual, and basically you can have a little percussive click at the beginning of the note. Hear that? Let me decrease some of these. Actually, if I decrease all these drawbars, you can hear the percussion by itself. That is the sound of the percussion. You can have it soft or loud. Actually, soft is right there when it's lit, and loud is when it's off. For some reason, they call it hard in the screen. I guess soft and hard would make sense, but I believe on the original Hammond, it was called loud and soft. Then we have decay, as you can hear, as well as changing which harmonic it is, the second or the third. It's on the second right now, but if I change it to the third, like that, and you bring in some of these drawbars, you can really hear a difference, and the percussion is a really cool feature of the Hammond B3. So as I was saying, the Nord Stage 3 has a really good Hammond organ sound for a stage piano. No stage piano or even a clone wheel organ, I think, can truly replace a Hammond B3, but this one, if you're on location and you're doing a lot, especially if you're doing a lot of location work, this would definitely come in handy. My biggest issue with it, though, is just that getting to the organ lists can be a bit annoying, although if you leave it on the category and hit exit, all you got to do is hold the shift menu and then turn that knob, and then it will put you right back into the menu where you were before. So that's a little look at the organ sound there, the B3 Booker sound. Then there's also one called B3 Bullfighter. I'm not going to go through all these, but this one's particularly interesting because you have a synth down here in the bass, and then a really gritty B3 sound up here. Olin's not my favorite sound, but that is there as well, and there is a large number of B3 sound. And what's really great about this is that if you're in any organ sound like a B3 or even one of the Vox or the Farfisa sounds, and you want to edit the drawbars, all you got to do is just push these buttons, and they're there ready to be edited. Another top keyboard I reviewed, you had drawbar controls, but you had to enter a certain menu and do a little song and dance to be able to edit the drawbars and change many things. This here does not have any of that. They've kept menu diving in this instrument to as much of a minimum as possible, well, with the exception of putting all the organ sounds next to each other. That you have to menu dive. But for most things, they've really kept everything to buttons and knobs rather than going through lists and stuff like that, which I appreciate. This one here is a steam wheel. Another one of my not favorite ones, but what's kind of cool is they've put the couple of the drawbars on the mod wheel, which you can do through the morph assign, and you can put drawbars on the mod wheel if you want to, and that's kind of cool. So I think that that's about it for the organ sounds. I don't think I really played much in the way of a Vox Continental sound, though, did I? Here's one called 96 Tiers Vox, and you can change the drawbars on this as well, kind of like you could on the original Vox. Let me actually show you that. I never did that before. So that's for the Vox Continental sound. I like how they've made this drawbar over here really staticky. My Vox Continental is the exact same way. It has a bit of a little static sound there to it. But in the future, I'll be doing a video where I compare this instrument versus a real Vox Continental, as well as many of the other vintage instruments that it attempts to replicate, with the exception of the ones that I don't have. And so I think we will see that the real Vox Continental sounds a lot different than that. This is missing a certain, I don't know, crackle that the original Vox just has. And I feel like that vibrato is a bit different as well. The vibrato on the original Vox is a bit deeper and a little goofier sounding, but it has its own really unique sound that this isn't quite. But that is a quick look there at the organ sounds on the Nord Stage 3. Overall, I really like them, and they're a lot of fun to play around with. So hopefully you guys enjoyed looking at that as well. Now let's take you on a brief tour of the synth side, as well as the effects menus and stuff like that. And that will be, I think, it for the demo of the Stage 3. So now I figured I would take you guys on a brief little tour of the synth side of things, which is completely brand new to me, and this is actually my first entry into anything synth related, which is kind of cool, and they have made it a bit rather easy to understand, which is great for somebody like me. I do want to point out that there are a few really nice presets, at least in my opinion. I like the synth bass sound on the Spires MW sound. I think it sounds kind of cool. I think that sounds kind of cool. I know synths aren't everybody's cup of tea, but I think that one sounds kind of cool. But if you didn't like that one, you probably will like this one. It's really pretty sounding. First of all, they've got this really neat, like, almost organ sounding kind of thing in here. And in fact, I think it is using pipe organs in some context. And then up here in the treble, you got this really nice lead. That one is kind of cool to me as well. But basically the way the synth section works is, let me head on over to here and reset everything. Basically the way the synth side works is you choose a waveform to begin with. So you can choose in this category the classic, which is sine wave, triangle wave, saw wave, square wave, and a bunch of various others. There's also the wave category as well, which is wave second harmonic and wave third harmonic. Then we've got formant, which is, I don't exactly know what they're supposed to be, but they're like weird, let me turn that up a little bit, weird like vowel sounds, but it's a synth sound, which is kind of weird. Then they also have super waves, which are like really big, complex sounding synths and stuff. Some of them are, some of them aren't. And then in this category, when these two lights are lit, you can work with the built-in sample library, which I believe has 249 sounds in it, which is kind of cool. So you can also work with that and edit those and layer them with synths and layer them with all of the other instruments, which is kind of cool. But just to give you an example of the amount of control that you have with a synth, even with something as basic as a sine wave, which by itself is really uninteresting. That is a sine wave. These over here control the attack, the delay, and the release, decay and release of the sound as well. So as you can see, it was kind of taking a long time to decay, so I twitched that knob and it reset. See, that's really short now, but I want it to be kind of natural, so I'll put it right there. And then over here, you can change the oscillators and change what is happening to the sounds, and then this knob here can control that as well, as you can see. So this is changing the pitch of your default sound. This is the shape of it, and this is frequency of various things. But it gets really fun here where you can add in another sound here. So this is detuning stuff, but you can add in another synth sound, which is another sine wave. So you can make it go an octave below the sine wave you already have, or you could make it do something really weird and gross in the middle. Actually, that sounds kind of nice. Don't know what chords those are, but it's made triads and open fifth voicings sound really unique. You can make it do like an octave above, or the same pitch, or an octave above, or stuff like that. And this is also a fade in between them too. Whoops, I hit the wrong knob. I kind of wish some of these knobs were a bit spaced apart, because sometimes your thumb will hit them, and you wouldn't want to do that in mid-performance. But as you can see, you can fade between the two, and that's changing the pitch of this one. So these are the same. One of my favorite sounds on here, my sound effects though, is if you come out here to the unison, you can add in some really interesting chorus effects that kind of make it sound a bit like, almost like an organ kind of. But you can combine the sine with the triangle wave, you can make that do things, you can combine it with a saw wave, which is up to semi-steps, half steps. Combine it with a square wave, combine it with bell, and combine it with noise, which is honestly not my favorite effect. It's really loud sometimes. It was earlier. I was playing around with it off camera, and I was like, I don't like the noise. It was really loud. But that's the noise effect. You have another version of the noise effect, and then you've also got FM synthesis stuff too. So you can play around with that and make it do really freaky noises. Actually, making it go 5 half steps up sounds kind of cool. That's kind of a brief look of the synth pad and stuff. And so you have a lot of control, but all of that stuff was only with the sine wave. And so you can come in here and you can change that and make it be a triangle wave if you want different sounds, or a saw wave. And combining all of these different combinations gives you all kinds of really cool sounds. But another thing that's in here that you can mess around with is the sample library. And so you have a large range of string sounds. This is orchestra strings legato. I have the chorus on thing, so it's sounding weird. But there's a large number of these as well. Orchestra strings, chamber strings. I'm honestly not a huge fan of many of the strings samples in here, but the pizzicato ones are fun. Why does everything sound weird? I have it running through some kind of an effect, don't I? I don't know. It sounds kind of weird to me. It sounds weirder than it did before. I feel like it's running through some kind of effect because it sounds a bit weird. Let's head over to here and see if that... I don't know why it sounded weird before, but maybe now it will sound better. Let's go back to the pizzicato. Yeah, I don't know why it sounds weird on here. What happened to it? I don't know why it sounds funny on that panel, but I put it on the other panel and it sounds better now. But there's a large number of strings, samples, 16 violin staccato, which is kind of fun. Very interesting stuff, but the strings aren't the strong point of this. Oh, look at this, it has a nickel harpa sample. which would make sense because the nyckelharpa is like a Swedish, it's a Nordic kind of instrument. It's like a, it's kind of like a hurdy-gurdy, except there's not a wheel, it's a bow, and so you bow it, but you play it with tangents on the strings, so it's a weird instrument that's apparently very difficult to play. But this has a nyckelharpa sample. I didn't even know that. There's a few more string pizzicatos. That one sounds pretty nice. And there's a lot of others. Basses, all kinds. There's 129 various samples in here. Flutes and stuff. My decay is really bugging me. Actually, there's a release. There's a few nice ones in here. I like the, they have some, what do you call them? Some like chromatic percussion in here that's kind of neat as well. Where is it? A lot of guitars and things in here as well. I might have passed them up, but I know they, yeah, here we go. Like we have marimba. Which is a very soft, woofy kind of marimba sound. We also got a vibraphone, I mean xylophone. We have a vibraphone, which needs some tremolo. That's what that needs. There we go. That's how we do that. It was also a metallophone. And kalimba, as well as a few other things like a mabira, which sounds really weird. The mabira sounds very, very strange. Especially when I get into the high treble. I don't know why it sounds like trash can lids, but a real mabira is much prettier than that. We also have a celeste sound, which is, the celeste is one of my favorite instruments, so I love this one. Many of the samples on here, though, they sound kind of soft and poofy. I don't know why. We also have a J Celeste, which perhaps is a imitation of a Genko Celesta. Sounds a little bit different than this one, which is a little bit warmer and fuller. And there's also a Himalayan weird sound and a number of bells, glockenspiel, all kinds of random things. The toy piano is kind of weird and fun. But there's a large amount of samples in here. And one of the things that I find kind of funny is that there's actually pump organ samples in here. And I had somebody on my channel ask me what keyboard has reed organ samples. Well, I know the RD2000 has one of them, and this one actually has 4. There's a pump organ Coastler. And then we also have a pump organ, whatever that means. Pump organ 2 of that same thing. As well as, actually that's it. So there's 1, 2, 3, there's actually 3 pump organ sounds. So to the person who on my channel who asked what keyboards have a pump organ sound, the Nord Stage 3 has one mixed in with its sample library. So that is the sample library on the Nord Stage 3. Another cool thing you can do is you can actually put in your own samples as well, so you can go sample something out in the wild, a bird song or whatever, and you can actually put it in here and do your own samples and do all kinds of cool things, run it through the synth engine or whatever else you want. So that is another cool thing, and maybe someday I'll mess around with that. But that has been a bit of a look over of the Nord Stage 3. One thing I do want to mention, though, is the effects over here. Basically, the way they work is you can run, I think, most anything through the effects, but as you saw, I ran, what was it, the vibraphone through here. And so you can change the source where it's coming from. So if you hold down Shift and tap this button, you can toggle between the organ, the piano, and the synth. So I went to the synth category because that's where the sample libraries are in. So if I want to go to the piano sound, and let's say I want to run this Rhodes sound through a wah-wah sound, I can do that. And you can also change the amount and stuff. Hear that? As well as the rate. And there's a number of effects, and there's also 2 different effect categories, so I can have it running through a tremolo, which sounds really nice. I like the tremolo in here. You have a large range of which you can have it. You can go really fast, stupidly fast, in fact. But you have a really nice control over that, so you can really dial it in exactly what you want. But I can run it through both that and, let's say, a phaser very, very easily. And then I can also come in here and add in delay, or I can come in here and add an amp sim, which I've actually never messed around with before, but this must be the type of amp. And then you can have frequency, a bit of an EQ, as well as a drive, which is what I always use amp sims for. So we've got running through the tremolo, running through a phaser, and then also through an amp drive, which sounds ridiculous, but that you can do that with this if you want. There's also a compressor and a reverb, which all operate in the exact same way. So once you get used to the Nord Stage 3, it's actually pretty intuitive, but there is a bit of a learning curve because there is so much going on at once. And the way I think that you should best approach the Nord Stage 3 if you get one and you're new to it and you don't know exactly how to use it, is read through the owner's manual and kind of get an idea of how to use it, and then use the keyboard for a while. And then when you feel like you know how to use it pretty well, go back to the owner's manual and read it again, and then you'll be able to learn about some of the things that you didn't know how to do before but were a bit above you. So then when you know how to use the keyboard a bit better, you can come back in and learn the more advanced and complicated things. That's how I think that you could take this approach on learning how to use this and be fluent at using the Nord Stage 3. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this bit of a look at how it all works. I don't really think anyone's really done a video quite like that, so I figured I would take you guys through and show you the layout of it. Hope you guys enjoyed. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this in-depth review of the Nord Stage 3. It has a lot of things that it can do, which is really, really cool. The organ sounds on it are very good for a stage piano. The piano sounds on it, of course, are very good. That's what Nord is most famous for. And the whole synth category is very awesome for those of you who like electronic music and synths. You can layer them with the pianos and all kinds of cool stuff and do many awesome things with this keyboard. It's a lot different than many of the other keyboards out on the market, and it's also one of the most expensive that I have ever reviewed, and I think it's one of the most expensive keyboards that money can buy in today's market, at least as far as stage pianos are concerned. You know, the ones that don't have built-in legs. I'm not talking like avant-grands here, I'm talking stage pianos. This, I think, is the most expensive stage piano you can buy, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed this review of the Nord Stage 3. If you did, you might want to go ahead and think about subscribing if you're not already, and make sure to hit that notification bell to be informed of all of my future uploads. If you do that, thank you very much. If you like this video, make sure to go ahead and give it a like, and if you do all that, thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye. So for those of you who actually have bothered to stick around to the end of this video, first of all, congratulations and thank you very much for watching my videos all the way through. But I have an answer to a question that I asked earlier in the video, and the answer to that question is and the Mysterians. Now, if you know what that's related to, what I mentioned earlier in the video that is related to, let me know down in the comments of the video, and I will give you, I guess, a like, because that's about all I could do. But hopefully you guys know what the answer to that is, and if you do, let me know.